Built the plant in 53, Pike and Portsmouth DOE. U-235 in the groundwater chain, heavy metals drift with rain. They cracked the pipes, they dropped the shell, still denied what tests could tell. Open air, no tent in place, children sick, no public trace. Atomic corruption, filed it safe, never discussed. Paper trail burned to dust, you won't find what you won't trust.
Hello!
Atomic corruption, carried down the river bend. Across the state, you can't pretend this don't poison in the end. Kids with cancer.
I'm Dana. Welcome back, everybody.
Dust in schools,
You can find that song. I put a link in the description for you. It's called Atomic Corruption.
They said
Atomic
too
Corruption.
costly to contain, but
James
built
has
the dirt dump across
345
the
entries
drain.
of their songs.
Green up
just
CO2,
impossible.
same report filed. The fish
Recognize
are
or
gone,
understate
blame climate change. Atomic corruption.
All right, so let's get after it. Another one of those shows. I hope everybody's doing well on this planet, except for the nuclear industry. I'm Dana, by the way. You can call into these live shows. As usual, it's 709-589-4406. 709. We're in Canada. Here we go. That's the Canadian small modular reactors are 24-story buildings. 12 stories underground. How many people have been on in a 12-story underground building? The Native community is coming to the rescue again. We see this worldwide. The Native community got more balls than any country. I got a little bit of grease on my glasses. Ugh. Oh, it's not too bad. My apologies. I like to be the guy who invents a solution for cleaning glasses, where you just point something at your glasses and they come clean. They're going to be rich, whoever that people is. The Native community is strongly protesting the Nuclear Waste Management Organization death machine in Ontario, Canada. That'll be the second story after we get through the prelims, the preambles. I'm just blown away by the fact that all the whales are emaciated. That doesn't affect you. What's the point of being on this planet? And this is the nuclear has broken the food chain. It's only going to take a couple of minutes to run through this stuff. But because we got an extinction event, I think it's urgent that we have a conversation. That was a little quick. I'll try that again. It's okay. It's not too bad. Get the big old... Scientists fear a possible extinction of endangered whales. An extinction of they need the right whales. They need 50 babies born each year. They're only getting 11, and most of them are not going to survive to see 1 year of age. So they're a goner. There's 7,000 excess. They're trying to don't pay any attention to the media for their connotations, right? But there's 7,000 humpback whales on top of an unusual mortality event that was running for 5 years. So you had a 5-year unusual mortality event for humpback whales, and we covered this here on this site extensively. And then they discovered another 7,000 whales were missing, and they naturally assumed it was starvation, which makes sense because all the whales are starved. But they want to blame it on your tin cans, your pop bottles, your cardboard. Starvation causing mass bird deaths, and this was 1,000,000 common murres, and they dive 600 feet all day long for a joke. And they feed on anchovies and squid and sardines and krill and stuff like that, like small creatures. But at the same time, they were emaciated. All of them were emaciated. The consensus is they died of starvation. Really? That's your consensus? Normally, lately, they've been trying to blame it on avian influenzas and domoic acid and stuff like that, which we followed through with all of these necropsies and studies. It always comes back to the same thing. It's not bird flu, and it's not, or avian influenza, and it's not domoic acid. Even though that's real stuff, but because the animals' immune systems are now compromised with radioactive fallout, same as us, all of them were emaciated. Consensus they died of starvation. At the same time as the 1,000,000 common murres showed up, there was 1.4 million Cassini auklets and deer microscopic feeders. And that's important because, and they died of starvation. That's important because you have two different spectrums of the food chain showing up at the same time, emaciated. That's significant. Grey whale die off fear to starving whales. So you had emaciated humpback, emaciated right whales, emaciated grey whales. All the migratory grey whales are emaciated. When they were migrating south last year, they were emaciated. And now they're migrating north. There's 14,000 have died, 52% since 2019. And the whales were already in poor shape last fall when they began their 12,000 mile migration. And they out of 13,000, they only had 80 babies. The majority of them won't survive. None survived last year on the southern migratory run. The whales we're seeing are extremely emaciated. Now, I've seen a couple of whales today. They were a little bit out of my ability to determine their health. We're assuming they're emaciated. We'll be back on the water soon. I'll talk about that in a moment. The whales we are seeing are extremely emaciated. And that's not the right word. It's catastrophic emaciation. Their bulging ribs with shoulder blades and vertebrae are visible even from the shoreline. Then one of the whales I've seen today, you can clearly see very sharp definition when they were shallow diving on top of it. It was a very sharp definition, which shouldn't exist, right? The whales should have 12 inches of blubber. There should be nothing sharp on their spine, for instance, right? So you got 80 babies this year. All of the grey whales are emaciated. The last 13,000 left on the planet are emaciated. We get that short. That's our first story. The next story is about the Native community coming out very strongly in Ontario, Canada, rallying against the Nuclear Waste Management Organization. Thank goodness. Should nuclear scientists work at Fukushima before they run out of the homeless and victims of society? It's just a thought. That'd be pretty cool, wouldn't it? You give the homeless a day off. Should nuclear scientists work at Fukushima before they run out of the homeless and the destitute and the victims of society and the immigrants who don't speak the language? Well, I think it's a pretty good idea, personally. And so I got the parts off the motor this morning. It was pouring rain because I'm an idiot. And all I can think about last night after the show was I got to get the parts off the engine. It's going to rain most of today, if not all of today. So I was up bright and early, and I was like, ugh. I'll go out and tear the parts off the engine, put the cover back on it, and I dropped the pieces off. And so I'm hoping to have the boat up and running by the weekend, according to what I was told today. We still got to raise money to pay for all of this. And it's overwhelming that all the species are emaciated and we have such little support. We're the only people on the planet doing the research on top of that and reporting on it and providing the documentations for our assertions on the entire planet. And every time I check to see if we raise any money to cover the expenses, and there's nothing there, it's just... So we're just going to have to do a fundraiser every single day until we raise enough money to get back out on the ocean, which is a nightmare. It's going to be what it's going to be. Here we go. Spent fuel from Fukushima plant may be stored at an interim facility in Japan. Now, apparently they opened this place last year. I don't know if we covered it. If it was in the news, we would have covered the news cycle, so we would have covered it. It could have slipped underneath, or it depends, right? Because I can't remember covering it. Does anybody remember me covering this story? Let me know when we get through. The facility in the prefecture's Mutsu City which is in Fukushima Prefecture, I'm assuming, began operations last year. And so anyway, I got to do some more research to find out if we've covered this last year. Anywhere in between. The plant calls for moving spent fuel from the Fukushima Daiichi number 5 and 6 reactors, which are separate from reactor 1, 2, 3, and 4. Right? Reactor 1, 2, and 3, and 4 were right alongside of each other. They all melted down. At the top of those buildings was decades of reactor cores. And this is completely different from, say, Chernobyl and 3 Mile Island. You're talking about 36 massive reactor cores, 4 reactors in a row. Now, we were talking about this last night, that each reactor needs 1 million gallons of water a minute. And each glass of water has 1 billion creatures. It's going to boil them to death. Eggs and larvae and everything else, right? There's 75 to 100 million phytoplankton per glass of water. And that's 4,500 tons of water a minute for each reactor building. And that works out in a 24-hour period for each building. It's the equivalent of 6,450,000 one-ton pickup trucks with a ton of water in the back of it, dumped into those reactors to cool them down in a 24-hour period. And multiply that by 4 for the 4 reactors. And all of that, each glass of water has 1 billion creatures. So these are death machines, right? They really are. And which escaped, so you're saying reactor 5 and 6 escaped serious damage. But we do know reactor 5 and 6 lost their cooling. Right? They lost their ability to circulate water, they lost all power, which typically means catastrophic issues with the fuel assemblies. And just bear with me here. Documenting a genocide. Reactor 5 and 6. Here we go. Let me see if I can just bring up some. Just give me one moment. We're there. So there was a lot of connotations of releases that the reactors weren't in what you call, here we go, that'll work. Just to make sure it covers bases, because we don't really talk about reactor 5 and 6 too often, right? Reactor 5 cooling system stopped, same as reactor 6, and 1, 2, 3, and 4, and that's why they melted down. And number 1 was melting 50 minutes after the cooling stopped. And So why weren't reactor 5 and 6 melting down too? Number 5 releases may explain why so much radioactive xenon. Now the xenon here in the United States and Canada was somewhere between 450,000 atoms per square meter underground to 1 million atoms per square meter underground. That's radioactive fallout. And so that's why you don't have many bugs on your windows anymore. That's why you don't see so many animals. That's why your loved ones are dropping dead. And talking about recriticality occurred one of the reactor units. So that was suggesting that reactor 5 and 6 actually had a meltdown with those connotations. Number 5 and 6 were not in cold shutdown, implied report by the United States nuclear industry, and that the cooling at the spent fuel pool, you got to have circulation also in the spent fuel pools, which is where they were storing decades of reactor cores. And so reactor 1, 2, 3, and 4 lost those inventories also, which was around 36 reactor cores melted down. Cooling at the spent fuel pool, number 5, stopped until cables were installed. Well, how were you going to install cables when you had a tsunami sweep away 1,200 miles or kilometers? It's hard to say because they vary the reports of the coastline. The tsunami came in at 400 and 500 miles per hour, and so it disabled the entire ability. All plants are dependent on external power. Number 5 and 6 contain 8,000 tons of radioactive water. So why would you have 8,000 tons of radioactive water? And why were they going to transfer it to a mega float over the next few months? That water, by the way, was sprayed allegedly on because it was borated water. It was sprayed on reactor 1, 2, 3, and 4. But there was nobody able to go near reactor 1 and 2, 3, and 4 because they melted down. And they blew up and caught fire and blew up. Not necessarily. Hey, James is back from vacation. Sweet. Come on, man, get some music on the go, buddy. That's the first time we played tonight. Our music, man. Plus, I mean, James has been around forever, my goodness. Like, seriously, I couldn't even tell you he's been around for so long. It's the same as Dana Nasana. I couldn't tell you. Same as Albert. Bless his heart. We miss Albert. Albert's been around forever. Yeah, bless. We send out hugs for him and his families. He passed away recently. That was just heartbreaking. An aerial view taken from a helicopter from Japan's Self-Defense Force shows steam rising from number 3. This is lethal doses we're talking about rising, and that the plumes covered the whole planet. But my favorite story today, of course, is the Native community has made headlines, and they pulled in people. They've produced documentaries, short documentaries. One of them is called The Moth. You might want to look that up. Support those people. So this was the xenon radioactive fallout, and we mentioned that there a few moments ago, covering the entire planet. It's covering the entire planet. This model, by the way, is only based on 20 days of radioactive fallout. But we do have disposition radioactive fallout. These are not projections, these are dispositions. This is radioactive fallout at 1 million atoms per square meter on the ground. So it doesn't travel by itself. So reactor 5 and 6 escaped serious damage. Simply is not true. It doesn't pan out. As well as the Fukushima Dynie. And so that was really interesting they would raise that. The Dynie. The Dynie is allegedly going to be decommissioned. But we have whistleblowers. We have workers who were there at the time. We have all kinds of reports on the Dynie. Just let me bring up a couple of headlines on the Dynie. A friend of mine is in the hospital today. I hope they're doing well. I don't know if they are. I got to check in, I guess, tomorrow. Dynie. Here we go. Doesn't only take me a minute. I always have to do my search twice. Once is not enough. Okay, here it goes. Diney. The Diney was the ugly stepbrother of the Fukushima Daiichi. Bear with me, here we go. Give me, alright, this one, that one, this one, and this one. I just wanted to bring up a few headlines when they bring this up because it's rare for them to actually acknowledge it. But suggesting that it escaped damage was simply not true. Number 4, and so they're identical reactor sites. So Fukushima Daiichi is north of the Diney. Diney is about 10 kilometers south towards Tokyo. We are forced on ensuring Unit 4 is kept in a stable condition and fixing the 3 other units. So clearly Reactor 4 had issues and there was issues with the other 3 units. Again, it's very vague, right? TEPCO president mentioned the accident at the Fukushima Diney, not just the Daiichi. So there's many connotations of huge catastrophic issues at the Diney site. And bottom of the Diney reactor may be broken through, which is reactor 2 by the looks of it, and rumors of a possible explosion. Like, the bottom of the reactor broken through, it doesn't break through, it melts through. Well, it could break through, I guess, with a detonation, right? Because this stuff it'll heat up, and they're very high pressure at 1,000 pounds per square inch to begin with. And so if you lose their cooling, the temperature rises. They need 1 million gallons a minute, 4,500 one-ton pickup trucks a minute. Smoke seen rising from the Fukushima Diney after the quake, but before the tsunami. So the tsunami showed up about 50 minutes later. So the fact that there was smoke rising from Diney, which is the exact same thing we heard about Reactor 1 at the Daiichi plant. If you've never been here before, don't worry. It makes sense once you go through some of my stuff. Like if you go to my playlist and there's certain videos in there you'll find will explain the reactors to you or explain the emissions into the ocean to you. And I'll provide you with an unprecedented amount of documentation. Number 5 and 6 reactor was escaped serious damage as well as the Diney. I don't know why he done that outside of to reinforce the propaganda, right? And some spent fuel pull from the Karawa plant, which is the Ishikawa prefecture by the Noto Peninsula, on the west side towards North Korea, Russia, China, has been stored in the facility. So apparently they shipped, because you see what Fukushima is too, and then they got Japan. That's where Kishiwakazaki plant is too, Ishikawa prefecture. So they shipped fuel to the Fukushima prefecture, to Mutsu, or whatever it is called, last year. TEPCO decided to have a technical review on the spent fuel from the crippled, every time I hear the word crippled, I'm just very disturbed, Fukushima Daiichi number 1 through Unit 4. Right, reactor 1, 2, 3, and 4 have lost all of their inventories. I showed you pictures. This picture, by the way, was day 5. Once one reactor blows up, there's nothing you can do. You can't get close to the other reactors they're going to go to. Let me show you a couple of more detailed pictures, though, because this deserves prominence. So there's reactor 4. Does that look like it's crippled to you? Now they're pretending, this is media, you're loving media, pretending they're at the top of these buildings that don't even exist. Can you wrap your mind around that statement? And this is just a fraction of the media that But the rest of the media promoted this propaganda in order, because the nuclear industry is finished if people understood the reactors have lost decades of reactor cores at the top of the buildings and the reactor core. Each of the buildings had around 9 reactor cores. We're getting there. We're almost through the first story. A little quicker than last night. Last night was like 50 minutes to get through the first story. And so what we try to do is we try to challenge the lies, as many lies as we can in the story. Sometimes I just get sick. It's pretty rare, but sometimes I'll get sick of the lies, and I'll just skip the rest of the lies. And I should never do that. Because the only reason we're talking about the lies is because they're very important, and they show that this industry has incredibly evil intentions. It says the fuel reactor cores were cooled by seawater at the time of the accident. We'll see. Like, in order to cool the fuel that's already in the pools at the top of these buildings, you need to use a special water, what's known as borated water, to stop the neutrons from starting a criticality in the spent fuel pool, a meltdown. So salt water doesn't have those particular attributes. In fact, the sulfur is liberated from the water by the heat, by the temperatures, and it creates these spherical sulfur peroxide hydrogen buckyballs that will ingest plutonium and curium and uranium, americium, neptunium, and everything else. And now you're talking about super hot particles that are lethal to everything with replicating cells. Well, any radioactive fallout, like, you can put 200 million atoms of a head of needle, you can't see it. And a single atom could invoke a cancer, an illness, a disease, an autoimmune deficiency trigger in your body. You don't want this on your planet. You certainly don't want it in proximity to your country, let alone your communities. And all the fuel, like the fuel they're going to do in Northern Ontario, you got over 5.5 million assemblies, fuel assemblies. And you can't transport this stuff and then repackage it. And they're going to repackage everything at the site, which means everything is vented. And what I mean by that is everything is still splitting atoms for millions of years. So they're transporting it on the highway. And we're going to get to that story. I might as well wait till we get to that story. But just in case I forget to cover that part. So when they're going to be transporting, all the farms on both sides of the highways are going to be absurdly contaminated for many, many miles in both directions. And the water. And the spot where they're going to put it, there's thousands and thousands and thousands of freshwater ponds. Like, the whole story is insane. It's an industry with no respect and bad intentions. It says the fuel was cooled by seawater at the time of the accident, that the storing it in the facility, reprocessing it may not be feasible. She said spent fuel from the number 5, number 6 units is stored in good conditions, just like at any other nuclear plant, so he included it in the plan. So first off, there is no spent fuel in reactor 1, 2, 3, and 4. So let's just go backwards for 1 second. It said the fuel was cooled by seawater at the time of the accident. Storing it in another facility or reprocessing it might not be feasible, which is a really interesting thing, right? Because the fuel is gone out of 4 reactors, reactor 1, 2, 3, and 4. This is why we're seeing an extinction event worldwide, because of how radioactive fallout works. And we have the documentations. This is not a conjecture. This is not an opinion. This is a fact, right? Colette donated another $25. Bless your heart, Colette. For goodness sakes, don't put yourself in jeopardy. My goodness. You already donated last week. Thank you so much, by the way. And yeah, we're going to have the boat up and running by the weekend, which blows my mind after what I went through last year. As far as I can tell, we're going to have we'll know when the boat's up and running, right? We got no fuel for the boat. Got to pay launch fees for the year. There's all kinds of issues we got to conquer. We'll get there, because I don't know how to quit. And I'm going to start up a little company, a little business, because I got to raise enough money to get 2 new engines. I got to put 2. Let me just talk about that for a second. Don't mind me, I jump around sometimes. Let me explain it to you. So the research expeditions we've already carried out for 6 years, from Vancouver, British Columbia to Alaska. So that engine has been in Alaska 6 times. Right, I'm on the east coast of Canada now doing research. There's no birds. We're supposed to have 46 million migratory birds here raising their fledglings all everywhere right now. They should be everywhere. It should be maggoty. And there's nothing. It was flat calm today. I was out on the bike and I was going along the coastline looking for any migratory birds. There was nothing on the cormorants. They don't belong here. I see Zoe, man. It's a bit easier on me now, but I still miss her so much. So I need to put twin 70s on the back of that boat because I'm on Atlantic, so I need another powerful motor. And the twin 70 Yamahas are the best fuel economy on the planet and are most reliable, and they got an incredible track record, a wicked warranty, and it gives you security. I got to be out there. I got to be on the ocean 12 months a year when the weather is appropriate, right? So we've done the research expeditions. So that's the boat we're going to have back out by the weekend, by the sounds of it. So we've done years of research expeditions from Vancouver, British Columbia to Alaska because of Fukushima. And like I can show you an absurd amount of documentation of radioactive fallout from Japan. I'm not going to bother at this moment. Maybe later in the show I'll show you that. And so what we discovered, we got the plutonium, Neptunium-239, which decays to plutonium-239. 20-day models of radioactive fallout covering the whole planet. This decays after 2.5 days to plutonium. Plutonium killed all the animals. So just a quick run through. The species to your left now are exterminated in British Columbia, Canada. But it's not just British Columbia, it's Alaska and it's the seaboard too, right? The Pacific seaboard. They're exterminated. Those species to your left are now permanently eradicated due to the absurd amount of radioactive fallout. This model is based on 19.5 days, 468 hours. And so we got lots of studies and documentations verifying the radioactive fallout, right? And so your species to your left now are gone. Would you rather have birds and bees or nuclear power and small modular reactors? That's the only question you really need to ask yourself. It says, let's go back to this story. We got 3 more, then we'll get to the next story, which is one of the best stories I got in a long time. Is the native communities rallying against spent fuel pools, or the Deep Geological Repository in Ontario, what's known as Nuclear Waste Management Organization, had $20 billion, $26 billion for over 20 years and never grew a cent of interest. Yeah, right. The government had $26 billion and never grew a cent of interest. And the $26 billion came from the ratepayers. So the ratepayers should be able to get freedom of information to show the interest grown on that money. Because they grew interest on it. But they refuse to acknowledge, even 20 years later, they grew any interest. They're stealing the money, clearly. And they're buying off, communities and people up there in order to... the whole story is insane. We've covered it extensively over the last, say, 3-4 years. Said spent fuel number 5 and 6 units stored in good condition, just like any other nuclear plant, so he included it in the plan. But he didn't include reactor 1, 2, 3, and 4. He said because it was damaged with the salt water, but it's not damaged with salt water. It doesn't even exist. The buildings are gone. The spent fuel pools are at the top of these 190-foot, 65-meter, 19-story buildings that doesn't exist anymore. So where are they gone? How can you be in a building that doesn't exist? Dark times, eh? Representatives from several First Nations, other groups held a rally at the Waverley Park in Thunder Bay Friday afternoon opposing the planned deep geological repository. And the Nuclear Waste Management Organization done them dirty. They done them really dirty. And there was around 400 people, which is an amazing protest. That's an amazing protest. And that's enough to scare the living shit out of this industry. Fort William's chief, Michele Solomon, we've heard stories about her before, saying no to nuclear waste that threatens our life, our water, and threatens the animals, the earth, our children, and our existence. And that's the right attitude. That's the awesome attitude. That's a brilliant, that's the perfect attitude that all of these protesters got to mimic. Right? She's setting a bar by acknowledging the enormity of the issue. This is Darlene Necan, Ojibway Nation. And we've covered her before. Don't quote me right off the top of my head, but isn't she the one who was doing the long walks too, among many other things? Friday rally drove about 400 people. It's probably 600 or 700. They just don't want to acknowledge it. The Degenerate Nuclear Waste Management Organization. These are scumbags. These are degenerate, disgusting, despicable scumbags. Oh, I got some bizarre things going on down here. Looks like the nuclear industry has got a small team stalking me down here. I was approached by one of them today. It was the strangest encounter I've ever had in a long time. And they weren't naive at all. This is a really complicated subject, okay? The average person is not going to pick up the minutiae, the details of this stuff just with a simple conversation. It doesn't work that way. It's very complicated stuff. And so whoever this person was today, very well-groomed, clearly wealthy, and these are stalkers, as best I can tell. I'm treating it as a stalking event from the nuclear industry. And of course, you would expect that, right? I've been at this a long time. And, if policymakers and investors are watching my material, they're not going to hear the shit they hear from the apologists, right? They're going to hear stuff that's going to just, whoa. It's going to make them rethink their existence on this planet on top of that. Who has been a leading year-long process to find a site that says it's suitable for the spent fuel. Years long. It's like 14 years in that current area where they're to. Announced in November, it chose Revel Lake, located between Ignis and, I'm going to butcher names. There's nothing I can do about it. That's just the way it is with me sometimes. If I'm not familiar with the language, I have no hope at all of pronunciations. Wabagu Lake, Ojibway Nation. We've covered them quite a lot, right? They've been standing up to this industry for the most part that we can see. The facility is 650, 800 meters below ground, says the Non-Nuclear Waste Management Organization. They haven't managed anything. Everything is still splitting atoms directly into the environment. And we consider multiple rooms to store to use fuel. Calling these rooms they're supposed to be sarcophagus, not rooms. It has estimated construction could begin in 2033, and that, we don't intend to see that happening at all. You got to come up with real solutions, and reprocessing is not one of them. Could begin in 2033 with operations to start by 2045. Why would you put it in a watershed with thousands and thousands and thousands of freshwater lakes and right alongside the biggest aquifer on the planet? The third biggest aquifer of freshwater on the planet. Why would you put it in proximity to that stuff? That's where it is right now, by the way. It's right on one of the Great Lakes, right? Lake Ontario, which is providing water for millions of people in Toronto and millions of people in the American side. It's such an evil industry. And then the farms, they're being poisoned by the same radioactive fallout from the fuel pools at these sites. because the fuel pools are splitting atoms. Could begin in 2033. So another 20 years, they're hoping to have a hole in the ground. That's the best, the greatest, the smartest minds on the planet. They've all put their head together and they're like, oh, let's dig a hole and put it down there and run away. Like, if you leave this stuff on its own, it melts down. That's just the way. Some of it will melt down. It'll burn at 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures, and that will light up everything else down there eventually. It doesn't need oxygen to burn at 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperature for 1,000,000 years. It's going to, once one burns, it'll consume everything else in proximity. Right, it's going to cannibalize. It's going to cannibalize the gravel, the steel, the rebar, anything. And it's going to atomize and aerosol and ionize and radiate it. If it gets in contact with water, it'll split the earth open because water expansion is 14, 15, 1,600 cubic feet per liter. This is why we see the earth cracked open in at least 6 places at Fukushima by Reactor 2. And the plumes coming out of the ground are at over 10 sieverts, which is a lethal dose for a human in just minutes. Not minutes, but moments. And the stationary Geiger counters that they're using for those measurements are maxed out at 10 sieverts. So it's probably thousands of sieverts that's coming out of the ground of these holes. You're going to have the same thing in, and just give me 1 second actually. I put together some AI pictures to help articulate what would happen in Ontario. Oh, there, I'm lucky, I'll find it. Problem was I created like 14,000 pictures. Because I'm a freaking maniac sometimes. Well, that's how you learn, right? So everything on the highway is releasing radiation going to Ontario, and which is going to be like 100 years, is it, or something? They're going to be just venting radiation. And then the nuclear fuel site, hang on, I got some better pictures. I want you to be able to visualize what's going to happen once they... Here we go. So, say this was the Nuclear Waste Management Organization, typically surrounded by... All of these sites are typically surrounded by farms. Once one melts down, right, and that's what's going to happen, eventually everything else melts down. Let me get another depiction for you to try to... Like, it's horrifying what we're talking about. It's not a game. Typically, you expect to see farmland in every direction. That's a typical nuclear waste site, a nuclear storage site, a nuclear reactor site. 99 out of every 100 is going to be surrounded by farms as far as you can see to catch the radioactive fallout from the fuel pools. So when they bring the fuel there, everything is vented on the highway. So the highways, the food on the highways, it's all farmland, is all going to be incredibly contaminated. And they're going to repackage it. So when they get into the communities in Northern Ontario where the Nuclear Waste Management Organization is planning on setting up shop, everything's going to be repackaged. So they're going to have a 1 square kilometer facility, 1 square kilometer facility, wrap your mind around that statement, at the surface. And that's where they're allegedly going to repackage the fuel, which means everything is vented, which is typical. That's typical of any fuel that's transported is vented. And if they're going to be repackaging it, it has to be vented because if you displace the oxygen in the containment, typically with like helium, when you can't open that up. If you open it up and oxygen goes in, it's going to detonate. So it has to be vented. And so this is why they're typically surrounded by farms, is to catch the heavy radioactive fallout locally. But this stuff contaminates the entire planet. It's the only emissions that creates plumes that covers the entire planet. gas, oil, and coal emissions is carbon. More insects, more birds, more puppies, more life, right? More trees. Radiation failure that kills puppies and trees and everything else. If the nuclear waste seeps into the river, it's going to be even more devastating for their community. Yeah, there's no way it's not going to seep into the rivers. It's hemorrhaging. Everything is hemorrhaging all the way to the community, and then they're going to repackage it at the site so everything is going to be hemorrhaging. It's absurd how much you're going to see. Immediately, you're going to see within the first year, you're going to see massive heart, lung, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline issues. You're going to see Alzheimer's, dementia, autism, diabetes, Down syndrome, schizophrenia skyrocket. And because when the victims in these communities, in these native communities, are going to be ingesting so much radiation, breathing it in, it's going to be in their water, it's going to be in their food sources, their berries in particular. I mean, brutal doses. They're going to be producing radioactive hormones and radioactive stem cells. All the children, for starters, right? Which is the worst case scenario. That's the end of the natives, right? Because you're going to make all the children sick. The industry is evil. It's not supposed to exist. And now we're stuck with this legacy waste from the nuclear industry that is catastrophic to everything with replicating cells. If nuclear waste seeps into the river, which feeds all the farms, by the way, it's goodbye to the genetics of the native communities permanently. And it's catastrophic how it plays out right away within a 10-year period. But also for the land and the water, all in this whole area, that's what's at stake. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of ponds. Like, just paradise. It's literally paradise, that area. Well, let's put a big nuclear dump in the middle of it, contaminate everything. It's like a big joke for these people in the industry. And I used to know how to pronounce the Anishinaabe people, but I can't pronounce it clearly now. But for all the people that live in it, it's for everybody, right? The whole planet. The whole planet is dependent upon the native community winning this battle. And that's the reality we're dealing with right now. Darlene Necan, I apologize if I butchers anybody's names. I'm really good at that. I should get, if there's a gold medal for it, I'd have a wall of it. Was in Thunder Bay for the rally from her home community of Ojibway Nation and Saugeen, and I butcher names. It's a pastime for me. Located about 130 kilometers northeast of Ignis, and I know that's not the right pronunciation. I learned it, and now I can't remember. She had previously organized walks. That's right. That's the lady I was talking about. Opposing a nuclear repository. There's a picture of her again. That's her there. Bless her heart for doing that, by the way. It takes fortitude. It takes courage. And you got to be pretty stoic to face down this nuclear disease industry. And again, it's the native community that is out curb stomping the nuclear industry. Again. We should all be very grateful that the native community has the courage and the fortitude to stand their ground and get educated and push back. And they push back great. I mean, 400 people. The industry has literally lost their minds. You got all these prominent community leaders. Also, and we covered Turtle before. Was also scheduled to speak. So you have a lot of prominent people in these communities are getting educated and are able to pass that along to the community. This is a great thing. I think that everybody should be waking up and, putting a stop to stuff like that. And just saying it makes me feel all warm and fuzzy inside, because we don't really hear people acknowledging the enormity of the issue that the nuclear disease factories really are. These are disease factories. They're going to put in that part of the country, and all the food, all the lakes, all the wildlife, all the communities are going to be catastrophically and permanently brutalized by the radioactive fallout. I see Colette waving to Kevin, but I don't see Kevin's comment. In the comment section. Is Kevin Blanche in the comment section? Because I don't see him on my end. Let me try that again. I'll refresh the page. Maybe I'll... It's been known to happen sometimes. Hi, Dana. Yeah, I don't see Kevin Blanche comments. Colette says yes. I don't see Kevin's. I'll show it to you myself here now in a second. I don't see Kevin's comment. Watch this. So Colette waved to Kevin. And you can see the comments. I don't see Kevin Blanche in the comment section. Colette says she does. I'll keep an eye on it. I'm not sure why that wouldn't be. Because Kevin does comment her regularly. Should a nuclear scientist work at Fukushima? Somebody said no. Why would you say no? The nuclear scientist working at Fukushima. Like they probably just terrified that somebody would suggest he should work at Fukushima. That's what that was. Like, no, there's a nuclear wasteland. Dana, you can't expect nuclear scientists to go there. I was giving James a hard time when I seen him. I said, I'll put him some more music. His response should have been, geez, goodness, Dana, I got 345 songs there. Leave me alone. France and Switzerland shuts down nuclear power plants amid scorching heat wave. So they're heating the water to absurd temperatures. The water's already absurd temperatures. And it can't cool down the reactors. They're shutting down the reactors. So saying that it's reliable is absurd because the planet is getting warmer post-Fukushima, right? Post-Fukushima, we're seeing catastrophic health impacts. We got a story about that, actually. Excuse me. I'm excited to get the boat back in the water. Today would have been some day in the water. Summer's not here yet. Summer doesn't get here for another... I'm hoping in the next 2 weeks. The long-range forecast still doesn't look like summer's coming. Tomorrow's only going to be 12 degrees. I don't think that qualifies as summer. Summer's always late. It usually shows up typically in the middle of July, sometimes closer to the end of July. Due to scorching heat waves, which is spread across Europe, again, in recent days, post-Fukushima, mind you, a number of nuclear power plants in Switzerland and France, scumbag France, have been forced to either reduce activity, shut down completely as extreme temperatures. Like the French rivers were fed by the glaciers. The glaciers are gone. So the temperature is not regulated by the glaciers anymore in the summer times, right? So now all you got is hot water. You got some snowfall in the winter, but you don't have glaciers anymore. Same as the Cascades and the Rocky Mountains. The glaciers are gone post-Fukushima. Right, 6 years of research expeditions along that coastline where the Rocky Mountains are too, we watched it disappear over a 6-year period. Completely disappeared. You do have snowpack in the winter, but you don't have glaciers, which takes thousands and thousands of years in the right conditions to come back. These were post-Fukushima events. We're seeing our worldwide post-Fukushima. Fukushima was an event. And because you can't smell it or hear it or feel it or taste it or touch it or pick it up or perceive it or throw rocks at it, the average person can't conceive it. Which reminds me, didn't I have a Geiger counter up in my corner? Plop. I screwed that up, did I? Let me fix that. Just give me a second. Let me fix that Geiger counter. Can't read that. It's stupid. That's a bit better. That's 200 counts per minute. I'll just fix that. Give me 1 second. Yeah. Because that's another little camera that I bought in the hopes that I can resolve. Because I used to use a big camera for that, and I put so many hours on it, the camera ended up dying. That was a very expensive camera, and so I can't do that again. Anyway, that'll work for tonight. I'll try to. Let me make this a little bit. Get rid of the bottom because it doesn't matter. Here we go. Let's keep rolling. In recent days, a number of nuclear power plants in Switzerland and France were forced to shut down because the water in the river is too hot to use to cool the reactors, which means everything in the river is dead. And then 70% of the fresh water in France goes to the the nuclear reactors / disease factories. Nuclear sites run the risk of posing a dangerous threat to local biodiversity by releasing water which is too hot. You're talking about each reactor is going to release 6.5 million one-ton pickup trucks each day. That's how much water you need to cool the reactor each day. A single reactor is 6.45, we'll say 6.5 million one-ton pickup trucks with 1,000 liters in the back of it, with 2,000 pounds. In Canadian is 2,200. The French would be the same, because that's why we're stuck with the idiotic metrics, is because of the idiot French. I really disrespect the French government, not the people. I like the people. Unpleasant truth about nuclear energy regulator is not misinformation. So this story was today. Of course, it was from The Hill. Public comment on nuclear regulators welcome. Now, we covered that story. I remember this story. But misinformation is not. So anybody that criticizes nuclear is considered misinformation. Anybody who regurgitates the propaganda and the lies is considered the truth. That's how frigged up this industry. And the industry can only exist by this constant and conscious deception. Jeremy Whitlock seemed to think it's possible to make unpleasant truths go away by labeling them misinformation. Anybody comes out and uses those connotations is clearly a criminal in every sense of the word. So this was the original story. Public comment on nuclear regulator welcome, but misinformation is not. All of these stories were, you're just getting a little blurb. And so I had to start researching to try to find the story, which I didn't eventually find everything. But Canada fails to meet the key principles of nuclear safety, Ottawa activists. Some of the stories were suggesting this was an insider in the Regulatory Commission that had spoken up. And we covered this way back then. This was June 16, 2025, by the way. Should note that the reference 2019 review by the International Degenerate Agency / UN's International Atomic Energy Agency is no different than IRPA or UNSCLEAR or the IAEA's International ICRP or International Atomic Energy Agency. They're all UN, which is a military-industrial complex. It's 195 militaries. If that don't meet the definition of a military-industrial complex, what actually does? To have a robust and comprehensive regulatory framework. So this goes all the way back to 2016. And we covered this back in 2016. Letter alleges key information withheld from the Nuclear Safety Commission. This is important now because they managed to bury it in 2016, right? That's 9 years ago. Yeah, and I remember this story. We covered this back then. The Ottawa-based Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission is investigating allegations purportedly from an internal group of specialists that the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission's NERS are receiving insufficient information to make informed decisions about Ontario nuclear disease factories. And they're on Lake Ontario, which is part of the Great Lakes, which is the third biggest freshwater aquifer on the entire planet. It's the very last place you want to put nuclear reactors. Canada has the majority of their nuclear reactors situated, and Americans do too, have quite a few reactors. But the majority of the Canadian reactors are right on the Great Lakes. Like, this is the most catastrophic thing you can do. And you're talking about, and who knows, because if you go back look at the Manhattan Project era, they were dumping 45-gallon barrels into the Great Lakes. Right? There was no rules and regulations whatsoever. And when you look at the map of the Darlington Nuclear Generating Station, it's just one of the many nuclear sites. Look at all the community, not very far away, and look at behind me. You can see that measurement where my head is 1 mile, basically 5,000 feet. So they're only a few miles from incredibly populated areas. It's disgusting. And then they're part of the Great Lakes, which is the third biggest aquifer on the entire planet. And so you can see on the Canadian side, you got all these reactors. That's just the Darlington you're looking at. There's quite a few reactors on that side. But there's many other nuclear reactors on the Great Lakes, in the Canadian side. But the Americans also too, right? That's, just bear with me there. That's, I think I have the Great Lakes. Yeah, there it is. Right there. So when you look at the Great Lakes, look at all the nuclear power plants. Look at all the reactors situated on the Great Lakes. Look at all the nuclear dumps, the fuel facilities. They're targeting the Great Lakes, which millions and millions of people are dependent upon. So they're purposely trying to poison people by situating them in that spot. And the CANDU Canadian reactors are brutal. That fuel they're using, the CANDU fuel, is a tritium nightmare. And they've had some major events in Lake Ontario just from Bruce Power and from the Darlington site. Here we go. You get back to that spot. I just copied and I'll paste it for you. So they're targeting the Great Lakes, which is the third biggest aquifer on the entire planet. And Lake Superior runs into Lake Huron, Lake Michigan, all the way to Lake Erie and Lake Ontario before ending up going down to the St. Lawrence, to where I'm to currently, right? And these lakes are very important for farms and for cities, for water, for farms and water for cities. And so this is why you see a massive disease in these areas. The Ottawa-based Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission is investigating allegations purportedly from an internal group of specialists that the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission are receiving insufficient information to make informed decisions. In an unsigned letter, anonymous letter, copied to the citizen, the author, their main concern is the nuclear watchdog commissioners, how they go with plausible deniability, see? What they can say to their loved ones, well, honey, I didn't know. We didn't have any. The reality was they knew everything. That's the idea of plausible deniability, see? Do not receive sufficient information to make balanced judgment. But there was someone there that had pains of conscience, and that's why that particular letter showed up. So B says he can see Kevin. Let me come back there. I can't see Kevin. Right? Kevin's not there. He's not there. I don't see Kevin there anywhere. And James says he only saw Kevin when switching to live chat. And B says you can see Kevin. Well, let me give Kevin a call. I'll call Kevin. I think I got his phone number on this. I got a new phone. Let me see if I got my... Let's get to the bottom of this, hopefully. If not, I'll go get his number. Let me call Kevin. Let's get to the bottom of this.
The line while your call is completed. Long distance charges may apply.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi, Kevin. It's Dana. You got a few minutes?
Sure. What's up, Dana?
Hey, buddy. Are you in the comments section?
Yeah.
We're not seeing your comments.
You're not?
No. Some people see your comments, but I just showed all. Just give me 1 second here. I gotta fix this. I don't see your comments anywhere.
Well, you know how sequestered they got me. They got me buried under the pyramid.
Just hang on 1 second. Just hang on 1 second, because your volume is not very loud, Kevin.
Let me turn it up. Try to.
Yeah, I'm gonna do the same thing on my side. Oh. Hopefully that's better. Yeah, I don't see your comments at all.
I believe it. They've done that to me everywhere. Because I comment on the Judge's show and Katie Helper and these guys' show, and they tell me the same thing. That my comments don't even show up.
Yeah, I'm looking at the comments. I'm scrolling through the comments. I don't see your comment at all. I see people. I see people. Yeah, I see people saying hi to you.
Yeah.
So when I seen that, I was like, I'll just look and see what Kevin's got to say. And I said, well, shit, I better call you and find out what the hell is going on, right?
Yeah, they got me sequestered. They got me so hammered down. They sequester my comments, view count. I mean, that's
I check your site regularly, man. They got you barbarized. And for anybody that's listening, that's Kevin Blanche on YouTube. You'll find him on YouTube. Yeah. What's new? I keep you for a minute. What's new? What's going on? Anything you want to talk about, Kevin?
Yeah, well, I've been, of course, battling them here in Utah. Their nuclear hub bullshit lies. And then I've been in Wyoming battling Bill Gates' fake unicorn factory up there in Wyoming.
Yeah.
You know, the whole propaganda. So I've been here, Wyoming. You know, of course, I've been out in Nevada at the Energy Solutions dump site. But we got some good news.
Yeah?
Yeah. I've been working on the canister removal at San Onofre.
Right.
I've been working on that for years.
Yeah, I've seen that.
The Supreme Court ruled in our favor.
Woohoo!
So, on that repository in Texas. So it's all built, whatever, and Texas filed suit, didn't want it, blah, blah, blah.
That's Holtec, right?
No.
Chris Singh? No?
Holtec's the one who decommissioned it and put those lowlifes, got it. They turned into crooks.
Gotcha.
Of course, we always knew they were. But now, this new, it's a different company. Holtec started it and passed it off to some people out there, and the pad's all built. It's right there on the Andrews, Texas, right on the Texas-New Mexican border. But anyway, I've been working with the congressman in District 49 in California, which is Senate Upper District, Mike Levitt, and he's been working to get it off. And anyway, so he got a bill through Congress called the priority list. I wrote the list. Of course, I didn't get no money or credit for it. But
no.
So Senate offers first. The candidates are on the priority list. I wrote the list, and so anyway, it's been fighting through court. Abbott, that piece of shit, sued. Of course, Utah and Texas have got together and sued the NRC and sued. I mean, and it's all tied up. But it finally made its way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled that they can't stop it. And so,
wow,
that's a big win. Of course, it ain't gonna do much good on Fukushima or
but
Diablo Canyon.
No, it's still important, Kevin.
Yeah, and I've been working on Diablo Canyon, and of course that piece of shit, fucking Gavin, and Trump, fuck, what a nuclear fucking rat he turned out to be.
And he originally said they were going to have 90 gigawatts of geothermal, right? That the first couple of days, because we covered that. And now he's gone hardcore nuclear. He's like, we need a nuclear renaissance, and he's just throwing money, and he's getting rid of regulatory agencies. And go ahead, Kevin.
Oh, he's gone nuclear fucking mad.
Yeah.
Well, he's on his knees, fucking sucking BB's ring.
Yeah.
He's
big time, isn't it?
I mean,
it's horrifying.
Well, the thing that people don't put their mind together, and I tell people all the time, I tell everybody in the activist community. Of course, a lot of us are all dying.
Yeah.
And but I tell everybody in the activist community, one day you'll wake up and it'll hit you like a lead balloon and it's upside your head that, Blanche had it figured out years ago. The top of this imperialist heap is nuclear energy.
Yeah.
They don't get that. I says, you think it's any coincidence that Lord Bezos, Lord Gates, Lord Musk, Bibi, the whole Zionist Israel clan
are pro-nuclear.
Pro-nukers.
Yeah.
Every one of them.
It's bizarre.
I wonder why.
It's bizarre.
It's free money. It's free giant billions of dollars money.
It's massive money, yeah.
Oh, it's
if you're corrupt, the nuclear industry wants you right now.
Yeah, it's the most corrupt industry in the world, and the most pork, and then it controls societies. But Iran handed Israel their ass.
Yeah.
So it's over. They don't know it's over, but it's over. Trump goes in there and the thing that kills me, the other thing.
What's your next move now, protest-wise?
Well, I'm headed to California to work tide pools.
Oh, you're going for tide pools? Sweet.
Yeah, I'm still doing that. So I'll start in Ocala and work all the way down south. But yeah, I'm getting ready to go.
Yeah, no birds, no nothing, man. It's bizarre land. There's nothing down here. We're in the middle of migratory run.
Here.
Nothing. Not a single migratory bird.
Migratory run. Same here. I live on the edge of the Great Salt Lake. We're talking one of the greatest flyways on the fucking planet.
Have you got any updates on salmon in your area?
Oh yeah, the salmon. I've been working the salmon counts too. It's another catastrophe this year, like every year since Fukushima happened.
Yeah.
So
just
Alaska,
worse and worse and worse.
Everything. California finally come out and says there's only 90,000 Chinook salmon left in the entire ocean off the coast of California.
Well, they're gone.
Yeah.
Did you see
they're on the verge of extinction?
Did you see the headlines, the recent headlines I've been covering of all the gray whales are emaciated on the migratory run?
Oh, I've done hundreds of videos on the gray whales. I've been working the shit out of those all year this year.
I just wanted people to hear your input. Yeah.
I'm the world's foremost expert on those. I've been working this thing, and this whole lie that NOAA come out and said unusual mortality event, and they declared it over in 2019. So 75 biologists got together, and they finally come out with their study this year and says, oh, Blatch was right. This starvation event started in 2012.
Yeah.
So NOAA come out this year, and they're saying that they're down 65% since 2016. I'm like, no, they started collapsing. So I'm friends with the guy at the Laguna in Mexico, and I talked to him earlier this year.
Oh, in Baja, Mexico, where they raised their youngs to, where they birthed
where they birthed. Yeah. And I talked to him earlier this year in January, and he says, well, the 40 washed up dead in 1 week, and then there was another 40, and then he called me and said, all of them are dead. And I said, what do you mean all of them? And he says, all the mothers. All the pregnant mothers, every fucking one of them died. Every one of them.
Wow.
And so I've been keeping count. We're up around the 2014-15 numbers on the grays starving to death. And the other thing people don't wrap their mind around is the fact that the orcas and the grays and the humpbacks aren't even making it back to Alaska. They're camping in Monterey Bay and in San Francisco Bay.
So that's the end of that.
The orcas are moving in there.
That's the end of that.
Yeah, I mean, they've never been there in the summer.
No,
well,
never,
the orcas
never,
are
no.
hunting them.
Not even.
And now the orcas are hunting full-grown out grays
eating
and
their tongues
humpbacks
and
in these bays. Oh, they're eating the whole fucking wells.
They're easy prey.
Well,
they're so emaciated
they
can't. They're so emaciated they can't do anything, and so they're tearing their tongues off, right? They're just going for the tongues, and then they go kill another one, eat the tongue. Desperation. That's desperation. That's the dying.
In the history of mankind, there's never been humpbacks and grays in the summertime in San Francisco Bay.
Yeah.
Or Monterey Bay, or Diablo Canyon Bay, and they're there. They're in Mission Bay in California. And Channel 8 News reports it down there when I was there this winter. Oh, isn't it wonderful? Look at the orcas are playing with the dolphins. I'm like, you dumb fuckers. The fucking orcas are eating the fucking dolphins.
Eating the dolphins is more like it, yeah. They don't play with dolphins.
Yeah, they are.
That's why I say
they're eating them.
They don't play with dolphins. They eat them, yeah. They might play with them and then kill them, but they're not playing with them like friends.
Well, that's the whole thing. It's unheard of for happening this time of year. They're starving to death. This is the greatest ecological collapse in history.
It's a total collapse, yeah.
What
I'm seeing is horrifying.
Yeah,
like we're supposed to have right here. We're supposed to have 46 million birds right in my back garden. Each summer, supposed to come here and raise their fledglings, and then at the end of it, there'll be 150 million, 200 million birds fly out of here. There's nothing. There's nothing here. So they didn't go somewhere else. Millions of generations have raised their fledglings. They're dead. Yeah.
Same thing here. I live on the Great Flyway, the Great Salt Lake. I never seen anything. I documented that all year, every day on the spring migration, and I mean nothing.
It's
unbelievable.
It's horrifying.
It is.
Yeah?
It's freaky. It's such and you know, you can draw it all the way back. I tell everybody, I don't do opinion. I'm a scientist. I says I've documented this from hardcore. So it's called an outlier in science. We know factually the greatest outlier in human history is 2011. So I tell these people, even the biologists come out and says, yeah, Blanche is right. The starvation event started in 2011, 2012.
They all have all the die-offs.
Caused it.
All the die-offs have that one thing in common: they're post-Fukushima.
Yeah,
all of these events are post-Fukushima.
That's called an outlier in science.
Yeah,
it's the greatest outlier in human history. So I tell everybody, okay, so I argue with all these scientists, these PhDs, they all know me. You know, and I email them all.
Yeah.
Oh, global warming. So you telling me global warming started in 2011, 2012? That's what you're saying? No, I didn't say that. And I says, that's exactly what you fucking said. So I says, you can argue with me. You're going to admit, now everybody's admitting the great trigger and the great outlier was 2011, 2012. Everybody's admitting it. The whole world's admitting it. So I says, okay, what happened? Did a meteor strike the fucking ocean? Did a volcano go off inside the ocean and coat the earth like Krakatoa for 10 years? Block out the sun? No. How about 4 more fucking meltdowns at Fukushima? And then I tell them, you're telling me there's no byproduct for fucking nuclear meltdowns? First time in human history has ever happened?
That's what they're doing, yeah.
That's insane. For every action, there's a reaction. That's fundamental science. So
I mean, you're telling me... They're claiming only tritium got out, and I mean...
yeah, that's my favorite. That's my favorite.
Not even tritium 3H, but tritium.
Yeah.
I mean, these people are insane. They suggest that...
And they're so fucking ignorant and stupid, fucking grossy and fucking fruit, and they listen to these idiots. Tritium.
Their job, yeah, I know their job is to... I'm drove nuts every time I hear the word tritium. I'm like you, where I lose my mind for a minute or two.
Well,
I can't stand the word. Yeah.
China, apparently, I haven't seen it yet, came out again 2 days ago and said that they've got rockfish again with 300 times the background levels in them, just like they did 3 years ago.
China.
Remember they came back? China come out and said in the Pacific Ocean,
which is
137,
north of Japan,
Season 137 was fucking 180 times. That was just 3 years ago. And then the Bueller study in 2011
showed I got all of
times
that.
over the background levels. Yeah, so I'm telling you, how the fuck did that get there? Are you going to explain that to me?
Oh, well.
And the people just drool at you. They just look at you and drool like they're retarded.
It's disappointing that there's so many scumbags on the planet in the academic community,
it shows
right?
You who the nuclear industry is. It's the same BB Zionist crowd that's bombing children as they starve to death in cattle chutes. So they control the media. So it's real obvious to see, just like the whole genocide that's going on in Gaza, those same people covered up Fukushima. It's the exact same people. The same imperialist cults. It just shows you what a thumbprint, what a stranglehold they have on this country, on the internet, media. Academia is completely gone.
Well, we don't have... So you're going to be heading to California to hit the beaches, the tidal zones. When are you hoping to get down there?
Soon. I'm going to leave probably Saturday.
Okay.
I'll probably be down there all month. I'm going to work all the way from San Francisco all the way down south.
It's going to be scorching hot. Looking forward to it, Kevin.
Yeah.
Good stuff, my friend.
Well, we got two really good low tide scenarios where it's going to be early in the morning, but we haven't had any good low tide scenarios. Yeah. We had really good low tide in January, and I got it documented really well.
Yeah.
But we haven't had any really good ones. But we're going to get some good ones this month. So I'm going to get on it.
Big
like
full moons, yeah. That's the best time.
Yeah.
If you can't find anything at the full moon low tide, it ain't there. It's never coming back either.
Well, and you got to catch.
You got to document it. You got to document it to prove it. That's the unfortunate truth, right? You have to be able to document it.
Which I have.
Yeah. No, that's what I'm saying. If we don't do it, we'll regret it over the next couple of years. It's disgusting industry. Anything else you want to throw out there, Kevin, before I let you go? Anything else you want to?
No, it's just a sad battle that we got going on here.
It's madness, boy.
I mean, it's pretty sad that we get no backing, we get no nothing.
No, nothing. No, it's,
it's
desperation. And yet we still go hardcore as often as we can, as long as we can. That's the calling, is it, boy? I guess,
Yeah, the fight is the life, as I say. What else do we do? Lay down and die.
I think at some point it'll change. At some point the planet has to wake up. The planet will wake up.
It's depressing.
Yeah. No, tell me about it. We're the honest people. We're doing the work that the academic community refuses to even acknowledge. And it's blatant. The evidence is so blatant. And we're fortunate enough to live in a time where we can share that information. If this happened 30 years ago, we would have no way of having this conversation, let alone sharing the documentation, right?
We'd both have Nobel Prizes if this was not 30 years ago. This is before they had the media covered.
That's true too. That's a great point, actually. That's the saddest point imaginable.
Well, it's the greatest PhD in human history that's been done.
Yeah.
And you think about it. I mean, who else did this? Without you and I,
it was just me and you that I know of. I don't know of anybody else. I can't name another person. That's what frightens me, keeps me awake at night. Is I can't name another person. And
we get 100 views if we're lucky.
If we're lucky, yeah. Well,
I mean, it's out. But you know what, Dana? That one last thing I'll say.
Yep.
Is sequestering anybody that's contemporized on social media platforms that calls themselves an anti-nuclear. They're a fucking clown circus. History's going to record this and look back. It's a feather in our cap, the way they go after us.
It is so, yeah.
I mean, it just shows because they hate the fucking truth and they hate any PhD. And Semmelweis said this when he was doing his germ theory. And Semmelweis said this, and he was invisible. They beat him to death, threw him in a rubber room on germ theory. He said, all great knowledge is persecuted, always will be. That's exactly, this is new knowledge. This has never happened before. So, of course, they're going to persecute us.
But not to see your comments in my comment section is absurd.
Well,
to me, that's absurdness. That's absurd, boy.
So did Max Blumenthal. All those guys that are getting really in vogue fighting, the genocide in Gaza. Look, I had a comment up there the other day, and it had 700 likes on the comment in the first hour, and it had like 1,200 replies to my comment.
Wow.
An hour later, it was gone. It disappeared. And I talked to her, and she's like, I never took it down. So there you have it. That's been their answer. I mean,
fucking evil, man.
I mean, it's out. You'd think at some point, some whistleblower inside the government, and somebody say, hey, the cover-up of Fukushima, what they did to Dana Kevin Blanche, somebody would come forward and say, hey, look what they did. Because we were right the whole fucking time.
We got the moral, we had the moral high ground, but I mean, we're fighting for humanity, and it's absurd that we're not able to fight back appropriately, right? If we had a foundations,
it's disgusting.
We would just cave the head in of this nuclear industry in a matter of 1 year. If we had the funding, we would take this industry apart in less than 1 year, I bet you.
Yeah, well, that's what we were doing early. Early on, we had them on the ropes. Fuck, we were knocking over nuclear reactors left and fucking right in this country.
We still do, because the policymakers and the investors for the industry, they got to look at you and they got to look at me. They can't ignore us.
Oh, I know all the NRC personally. I talk to them. They all know. They're like, Blanche, we all know you're the guy. Everybody fucking knows. Every place I go, I don't care where I go, people come right up to me.
Yeah.
You know, and say, oh, and I'm like, that's not fucking funny because I get 112 views. But I tell everybody, you're not going to stuff my toothpaste back in the tube. You're not going to fucking put my lightning back in the bottle. I flipped that bottle behind my fucking back and broke it with a bat.
How many times, just to let you go, how many times has Kevin Blanche went out on the streets and protested? Is just thousands and thousands of times. That's incredible, eh? That's some legacy on its own, buddy.
I'm the only person that's ever been in the NRC's face. I tell people, the NRC will tell you, I'm the keynote speaker to this day on the NRC hearings. They do them online now. I'm first guy up every time. I tell people, do you think that's coincidence? No, I earned that. That's called credibility.
Oh yeah, the school of hard knocks, so but the reality.
Yeah.
I
get nothing for it.
You brought the fight to him. I can't possibly articulate.
Look what we ended up with.
I can't possibly articulate how many times, and thousands of times you've done that. Good on you, buddy. Good on you, my friend.
All right.
God bless.
Well, we just keep fighting, brother. Keep fighting. Good hearing from you.
Well, I'm glad that you're dear, but I'm terrified that you're not in my comment section. That's crazy stuff, man. Okay, Kevin.
Yeah, well, all right.
You 10-4. Yeah, 10-4, buddy. Bye-bye. Kevin is not in my comment section, but yet he's leaving comments. That is horrifying. That's fucking terrifying. Excuse the language. I might as well start swearing now. Kevin's been swearing for 15 or 20 minutes straight. I can't blame him. Right? You know, you can't blame him. That was Kevin Blanche. Well, that's pretty shitty news. Alberta's going to hold a nuclear power consultation as the reactor companies weighs opportunities. Well, the Canadian small modular reactor is a 24-story building. It's bigger than the Fukushima's massive reactors. It's the farthest thing in the planet from a small modular reactor as you can get. 24-story building. And then the picture they shows you before they actually announced the small modular boiling X300 was basically a one-story building. But the reality of it is it's 12 stories below ground and 12 stories above the ground. This is a massive, this got nothing to do, and they're calling it a small modular reactor. They're just, it's such an evil industry. I can't comprehend it, how the population can be so silent and so complacent. Yeah, I'm just in shock that I can't see Kevin's comments. I think the real one. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Fourth, languages to go. Just people I wasn't paying attention, so let me just scroll back. All right. Let me see here. Well, that's quite a shock to the system, is that Kevin is not even going to show up in my comment section. Thank God other people said hi to him. James is pretty silent out there. Is he cooking up another song? Should I stay for another 30 minutes? Just in case he got another song? I think I will. Starving for a new song. I hate doing that to anybody, right? But he's already got 345 songs, so I feel guilty. Saying, come on, put us another song. Like, what the frick do I want out of the guy? He's already got 345 anti-nuclear songs. More than the entire planet combined is produced in history. He's produced himself. Let's see if I can get back in. Like, it's hard to get back into the show now because talking to Kevin, it's just holy shit, man. How did I shrink to be that small? I gotta get bigger. I gotta get my great big head back in the picture here. There we go. Not as big as Doug Ford's head, thank goodness. What a scumbag. So Doug Ford closed, 2 years ago, he closed down 700 wind and solar farms in Ontario. And there was $5 billion allocated for them to build storage. He took that $5 billion and gave it to Bruce Power, and Bruce Power built storage for a nuclear power plant and water battery for nuclear power site. Why would you need a water battery for a nuclear power site? They didn't want to give the money to the 700 wind and solar farms in Ontario. They defunded them. And then they gave $13 billion to Darlington to refurbish it. And otherwise the renewable industry would have just curb stomped the nuclear industry. Because they had $5 billion so they can have storage for the renewable wind and solar farms in Ontario. Doug Ford closed all 700 of them. And so this is the Calgary Stampede, I guess, going on. And they're talking about nuclear. What the hell is Doug Ford doing in Alberta, of all people? What a scumbag his entire legacy has been so far. And then they used a greenhouse gas emission. There is no greenhouse gas emission from gas and oil and coal. Carbon, just hang on, let me show you what carbon does. Carbon is your friend. Without carbon, you don't exist. Without carbon, we're going to look like the moon. Just hang on, I got the real stuff here for you. Oh. Nuclear industry is insane, eh? I don't understand. Hang on, let me go back. What's the problem with doing this for so long? You got so much documentation, you can't possibly articulate it. Okay, here's one. Oh, I got them. I got the both of them. So this was a House Transportation Committee hearing on Infrastructure Investment and Job Acts, but they were in charge of the carbon. And so this one farmer who's got the podium asks them a simple question about carbon. And they make guesswork out of it. It's hilarious, but it's scary because it shows you this, how the people that are supposed to be in charge have no concept. I might have to restart this if the volume is too low. Hang on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Panelists, let me just go right down the line real fast. What percent of our atmosphere is CO2? Take your best guess. You don't have to be accurate. All down the line.
Repeat that question.
What percent of our atmosphere is CO2, carbon dioxide? Wild guess. It's okay.
I'll bite 5%.
5?
I'll just follow you then.
We'll go 7. That's my favorite number.
I'll see their 5 and suggest that we know that transportation causes 49% of CO2, so that's why we're all working on energy transition.
All right. So what number do you think it is?
5.
5? How about you? I didn't hear you, Mr. Dreyer.
7.
7. Did you have one, Mr. Boyd?
So we got a 5, 7,
This Price is Right.
8. I'm going to
Okay.
hit the high end.
All right. Well, I appreciate that, and I don't mean to put you on ice. I ask a lot of people that because all we hear is climate change, CO2, CO2. I heard a couple of you on the panel saying you're looking to change your vehicles to electric, even though we don't have the electric grid. And me as a farmer, I wouldn't be real happy about running out and replacing $300,000, $500,000, $1 million pieces of equipment because someone wants it to be electric. The answer is 0.04%. Not 1%, not a half of a percent. It's 0.04%, and it's gone up from 0.03 over the last couple decades. This is what we're being all contorted into doing, is this tiny change in CO2. If we get below 0.02, plant life starts dying off.
So there's literally no carbon, right? There's less carbon than there should be in the environment. But here's what happens if you add carbon. This was a 5th grade students done an experiment. And it's got crappy music, so I'm going to turn that down. So they had 2 plants, 2 CO2 concentrations, 42 days. 180% increase in atmospheric CO2. So 450 counts per minute or parts per million to the left, and 1,200 to the right, almost 3 times. So the plant grows way quicker. So you have more fruit, you have more harvest each season. And stem weight, you can see the difference is absurd. This is a 5th grade classroom, right? They're not politically motivated. They're doing an experiment in their classroom. Root length was 339% difference. At 14 days, you can see the significance of more carbon. More trees, more plants, that's good. That's good for insects. That's good for birds. That's good for the 8 million species. Leaf numbers, a 38% increase with more carbon. Bigger leaves, more mature, stronger stems. 9% increase of weight. Look how different the plants are, right? The healthiness, the sturdiness. It's just, the difference is so blatant. And so what would you rather have, less carbon or more carbon? More carbon is more plants, more trees, more puppies, healthier humans, healthier babies, healthier insects, healthier biomass, a healthier ecosystem. And carbon can't hurt you. Right? You can consume carbon all day, it can't hurt you. But radiation wrecks you immediately. Nuclear fuel market, this is a Sprout Uranium Physical Trust. Sprout Physical Uranium Trust, SPUD. Substantial buying over the past weeks failed to keep the uranium 308 price rising. So what happened was a couple of years ago, about 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago or something, Sprout Physical Uranium Trust showed up out of the blue. They bought all the physical uranium. And so the price of 308, the raw uranium from the mining companies, because there was a doldrum in the market post-Fukushima, right? It had rock bottom, it dived down, and it was dead. All the mining companies were going out of business. Nobody wanted anything to do with it. So they showed up and bought £1 million or something, and they didn't take physical possession of it. They just refused to release it into the market. So now you create an artificial demand. So the miners had to go back to work because you had obligations for reactors worldwide for the uranium. But now the investors had no concept this was happening. And so they done so good, they raised another $2 billion or something. Don't quote me the exact numbers. And they bought more of the uranium, and they created another artificial stock surge for uranium stocks. And this fooled, and this was perpetrated particularly by the Globe and Mail in Canada and many other big medias worldwide, started pushing hard uranium stocks, which were worthless. And then the bottom would fall out 2 weeks later, and the investors would lose 30-40% of their investment and panic and pull their money out. These are people that worked all their lives. And so here they are again, and they've done this many times in the last 3 years. Here they are doing it again, but this time they didn't get a rise in the prices. Thank goodness. But that doesn't mean, and so then they purchased another 500,000 pounds, or another 100,000 pounds, just under £500,000. So how was, well, it was 400,000, not just under, it's 100,000 shy, over the course of 3 days the week prior. So they're trying to artificially inflate the prices of uranium by gobbling up and temporarily stockpiling the supply of uranium, which is supposed to be already earmarked from the nuclear disease factories for their fuel cycles, right? But they're allowing this to happen to artificially inflate the prices of uranium. They're kind of doing the same thing with the small modular reactor companies that don't have a product. They don't have a small modular reactor. They don't have applications for licenses, which are roughly 2 million pieces of paper, into the regulatory agencies. They don't even have that. And then Trump turned around and pulled these requirements by signing a whole bunch of declarations last month or the month before. But you're still not seeing a nuclear renaissance showing up. Right? This is more, as far as I can tell, it's about robbing the investors and just stealing as much money from the government, taxpayers, and the investors before the renewables and everything else take over. It's just blind panic. And this is why you see the repurposing of sites where they want to, old sites that were supposed to shut down are now going to be repurposed for the small modular reactor that doesn't exist. Beyond those purchases, no further deals took place according to the market, particularly because Sprout Physical Uranium Trust has scared away other demand, and partially because many market participants were on vacation around the July 4th U.S. holiday. Well, that's speculation. That's a conjecture. That's an opinion. That's not a valid assertion to be tossing out there. That's just the industry trying to keep investors on a hook or something, which is the worst thing you can do. The worst thing you can invest in is the nuclear industry. The nuclear industry got the same gigawatts now as they had in the 90s. So why would you want to invest into a small modular reactor when you don't even have a reactor? So you're looking at 15, 20 to 30 years before you can start making, hopefully even then. And with the price, the cost of inflation, who can afford to invest and hold their money into that? And so you had the 14 biggest financial institutions on the planet at the Conference of Parties 28 saying they were going to prop up the nuclear industry. We thought they were going to invest in the nuclear industry. What they were doing was they were taking the small modular reactor companies every couple of weeks and they were buying millions of shares. And then the investors would look at this rising shares, not understand the nuances, the details, and would start speculating and putting investments into the small modular reactor companies, which had no way of earning money. And then a couple of weeks later, the 14 biggest financial institutions would sell off their millions of shares and steal the mom and pop investors who worked hard all their lives profits, And they're still doing it, and they intend to do it for many more years, as far as I can tell. But that's ultimately what we've seen happen now, regularly. Not in the last number of weeks, I've noticed, but we've been looking at this trend post-conference of parties, which is UN constipated parties, we call them, which is United Nations scam artists. Researchers transform the most persistent radioactive sludge. That's the scariest thing. We're talking about plutonium mixed oxide fuel, which is where you're reclaiming uranium plutonium from a fuel cycle. And that was banned in Canada, banned in the United States. Not because of the reasons they're telling you, but because the reality was there was so much released into the environment, it was a health hazard to the water, to the species, and to humanity. It's over the top releases from these facilities that we're talking about. The fuel pools are splitting atoms. Like the fuel, once it comes out of the reactor, is a perpetual disease factory. It's perpetually splitting atoms. The atoms are released, vented up those tall, skinny stacks, and are released into your communities. It's a death sentence for anybody within hundreds of miles of these facilities. And they're typically surrounded by farms. So going to your big supermarket chains is a threat to your health. The United States, 90,000-ton stockpile. Like, first off, the United States, at Hanford, not counting the other national laboratories, but at Hanford dumped 450 billion gallons in the 60s, 50s and early 60s, into 41 miles of online trenches that are uphill, that are downhill to the Columbian River, right alongside the Columbia River. And that's equal to it's equal to a 6-foot wide aquarium nuclear waste of splitting atoms. Like, this stuff is still splitting atoms for millions of years. It's equal to that material, 6 feet wide aquarium, 518 feet tall, wrapped around the entire planet. So it's very deceptive to suggest that 90,000 tons is the issue. When the Idaho National Laboratory had over 56 reactors, test reactors. Many of them melted down at that site. And that is situated on one of the biggest aquifers in that part of the country. Right dead center top. With the strict implications that if they have a meltdown, it will go down to the aquifer and they don't have to deal with it. And they spend hundreds of millions of dollars trying to mitigate the releases, the contamination of those aquifers after they realize it. Because that water supplies, I'm not sure what the number, 25,000 farms. Not counting all the communities drinking water. It's an industry that shouldn't exist. It has no right to exist in any capacity whatsoever because the fuel never stops splitting atoms into your environment. When you take it out of the reactor, there's no containment. And it's not really contained in the reactors. It's able to burp the radiation out to tourists. It's a disgusting industry. And the people in it are crazy. They're insane. They're extremely wealthy and they're insane. And for a lot of people, that's a good trade-off. But researchers are increasingly eyeing it as a resource. That's just the worst connotations you can hear. New techniques in transforming spent fuel. New techniques, bigger releases into the environment. So we're talking about catastrophic releases into the environment. They have to boil the fuel rods in 3,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures of acid. And then just to start the separation. And they only want the plutonium and the uranium-235. And there's an absurd amount of the 1,000 other isotopes being released directly into the environment. If it's on the ocean, it's being piped directly out into the ocean. Like the whole process, like the reprocessing facilities at La Hague in France, in Europe, say at La Hague in France, and the reprocessing facilities at Doneraile in Scotland and Sellafield. We got studies, we've done presentations on that just only, of nothing but academic studies, showing that those three facilities, reprocessing facilities, have contaminated the entire Arctic and Europe on the way there. In order to get to the Arctic, they had to contaminate Europe. The whole story is insane of this industry. Their power and their influence, they control your media, all of it, all your universities, and all the key positions in your regulatory agencies are completely captured. This is an industry that is out to destroy humanity and the 8 million species, and that's the best way to do it is the nuclear industry. You can't contain the emissions. And so when you see words like new techniques, it's the scariest word imaginable, because what we're talking about. In transforming spent fuel, nuclear fuel cycle directives from the Trump administration, the doling out of the Biden-era $40 million research program. A lousy $40 million. Typically, the nuclear industry can't do jack shit with $40 million. 90% of it is typically stolen through administration, right? All the Superfund sites, we see that clearly manifestation, right? To aim to repurpose nuclear waste on a commercial scale. Again, this is absurdness. Itchy nose. What does that mean? What does that mean? 18 concurrent viewers, 22 likes, and the most important topic in human history. Bless your hearts, they showed up. But like Kevin Blanche not showing up in the comment section, most of you people that are watching it are not showing up in the counter. Hi everybody. I'm a bit of pain in my back tonight. I'm not going to be able to stay in this position much longer. Well, we're up to the 150. Let's just get through this story and we'll call it Howdy Doody. It's part of the ARPA's Nuclear Energy Waste Transmutation Optimized Now Newton program, announced in July 2024. We covered this, which aims to make recycling the entire United States nuclear fuel stockpile economically viable. Well, they tried to do this at Santa Susana. They tried to build a mixed oxide facility, and I can't remember the exact numbers, so don't quote me. But I believe it was $13 billion they wasted. They had something like $5 billion worth of material for the plutonium mixed oxide facility at the Savannah River site, just sitting there after they stopped funding it. And so they gave that material away to schools and universities and other projects. Like the nuclear industry is a curse. It's a curse on humanity. And there's not that many people in a bigger scope of thing. And they're destroying everybody's health and futures and the species. Where and when do we draw a line? I urgently urge everybody that you have to get educated at least, because at some point, the top is going to blow off this industry. Some point, the world is going to turn on this. At some point, a nuclear scientist is not going to feel safe walking down the friggin' road. I can tell you that right now. At some point, whether I'm still alive when that happens or not, that moment will come on this planet. They can't hide it forever. At some point, the world will turn on this industry because it's an insidious. It's saturated with insidious, emotionalist zombies that hate us and hate the species, and are enabling this industry to destroy the future of everybody and humanity. And suggesting that's not an accurate depiction of what's going on is delusional, because the evidence, like, I don't have an opinion. I have documentation. I don't really give my opinion ever. Right? Everything we do is typically, I'm able to back it up with documentation. I typically do for my assertions, Because for so many years and years and years, the industry would attack. If I don't show you the documentation right away, they say, well, why doesn't he show it to you? He shows you everything else. Why doesn't he show it to you? Because he's lying. He's a liar. But I'm not. I'm 100% honest 100% of the times because it's an educational program. I do it for the love of you and the love of this planet and the love of the species. I love this planet because we don't have another option on top of that. But we have an amazing planet. We have an amazing planet. And I'm not willing to sit in silence. It's not tenable to sit in silence. The federal support under two administrations has prompted physicists and energy researchers to turn their attention to nuclear waste in an effort to meet the Fed's ambitious goal. Like, you got less reactors. Why do you need more? Why are you going to reuse? Why are you going to repurpose, reprocess something with so much toxicity? I mean, it's 2 billion. The emissions, a single atom is 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison. It's an absurd, unprecedented statement on its own. Why would you have more releases into the environment? Because that's what they're talking about. It's technologically possible. It'll take a significant investment. They have no shortage of money. Whatever they want, they can have. But they're still not able to produce more reactors. They've been going after fusion since 1904. They still haven't cracked it. And they're nowhere close to it. And a meaningful commitment from the country to actually pull it off in 30 years. Says Greg Pfeiffer, CEO at Shine Technologies. So why is Shine Technology, which is a fusion startup, is applying to its expertise to nuclear? It doesn't have expertise. It doesn't have fusion. So I'm a little confused with what expertise they might be able to bring to the equation. And why are they even looking at nuclear waste? Why would fusion need nuclear waste? Is that the cover story to call it a fusion? And it's a startup on top of that. There's over 100 startups in fusion in the last 5 years. And they're all basically working with the same design from 1904. There's no innovation there whatsoever. And I've never heard, right, the conflating fusion with nuclear waste before either. And $4 million, 90% of that will get stolen through the administration. So I don't see much coming out of the Newton program. I just see it as another of the many, many new venues that the industry has to rob the unsuspecting taxpayers in the country of its resources. Closing a nuclear fuel cycle involves separating uranium plutonium that comprises 95% of the nuclear waste, recycling them back into the reactor as fuel. It doesn't work that way. Like, they're only talking about plutonium and uranium-235. They're not talking about the other 1,000 fission products that are lethal to everything with replicating cells. So it's a very dishonest, disingenuous assertion. There are no technologies that achieve complete uranium-plutonium extraction, but there's so many other isotopes besides uranium-plutonium. The biggest byproduct of the fuel, by the way, is the curium isotope. And curium isotope, you need lead shielding 20 times thicker than you do for plutonium. So by doing this, you're talking about releasing an absurd amount of curium isotopes back into the environment. It's a fascinating read of scumbaggery when you read the story. Right there, because they're only acknowledging uranium, plutonium, and just two simple isotopes at that. And they're refusing to acknowledge there's another 1,000. Used fuel is full of good stuff. Vice President of Communications Orano. And Orano used to be Areva, which is a French government. And Areva was responsible for the fuel cycle for 1 million years. So what they done was, rather than keep the responsibility, they said, well, we'll just go bankrupt. We'll keep the same players, the same telephone numbers, the same fleet of vehicles and private airplanes, the same office space, the same fax machines, everything. Well, I doubt if anybody's using a fax machine, but you know what I'm saying? They kept all the original equipment, the same people, the same salaries, maybe gave themselves raises. and just started a new company, called it Orano, and got rid of their million-year legacy that they're supposed to. It's a disgusting industry. There's no way I'm going to get through all of this. And the type of separating in strontium-90, because of fuel application in marine. What the hell would a fuel application from strontium-90 be in a marine environment? Well, the aerospace engineering, they're talking about a heat source for satellites and stuff, right? Which you should never be introducing, because strontium and uranium, the plutonium, the anthropogenic man-made isotopes, they're man-made. We don't find that from the solar system. They're not created by the sun. These are not elements. They shouldn't be introduced into space because they're a foreign element. That's why we call them man-made. They're not from the periodic table. We added them to the periodic table when we created them, but they're not from the stardust that this planet is. All the species are already acclimated to through genetic spiritual selection. None of us are acclimated to the anthropogenic man-made emissions, the isotopes. And so we don't have an autoimmune trigger to defend against it. So therefore, there's a catastrophic event in your body. Your body attacks it for the rest of your life with white blood cells, whether you're a bird or an animal or a whale or a human. Your body attacks it every second for the rest of your life. So by doing that, you have less red blood cells, less oxygen, less nutrition, because that's what red blood cells carry, and you compromise your health. And so now you're more susceptible to pathogens and viruses that were normally harmless and innocuous and benign are now lethal because your immune system is compromised. Globally, only a handful of countries have the capability of nuclear fuel reprocessing, including degenerate France and La Hague, Russia with the Mayak, scumbag China, shithead Japan, and idiot United Kingdom. The nuclear industry in the United Kingdom is just parasitic, mass murdering genocide. The government in the United Kingdom, the universities and the media are a testament to evil. They're evil on a whole different level. The curse of humanity and the 8 million species, the death of humanity and the 8 million species will be traced directly to the emissions from the fuel cycles worldwide. We got over 1,000 fuel pools worldwide hemorrhaging radiation into the environment. All right, so we're back, baby. That's 2 shows in a row. We're off and running again, hopefully. I'm hoping to have the boat in the water by the weekend. Summer, we're just like a week or 2 away from summer. We're starting down here. It's prime time to get out there and do the research. Just give me 1 second here. James had never had time to post a song tonight. And I shouldn't pressure him to post music. That's a terrible thing to do. Oh, there's Kevin there now. Now Kevin shows up. Well, ain't that convenient? Yeah, there you are, Kevin. But how come the rest of his comments didn't show up? Why did it show up after he calls in? Why does it show up after he calls in? So this, the closing song tonight, I'm going to post a link to that right now. And that's the same site, James Lewis's site, as the first song you heard tonight. Yeah, we got you, Kevin. Have a good night, my friend. Hugs for everybody. I'm going to do the closing song here in a second. You got about 2.5, 3 minutes to get another vote in there. Or give us a like if you can. And we got a great song for the closing tonight. and you can find it over at James's site. I put a link there to this song, so there's no way you can't find this song. But if you're trying to find this link for the next 12 hours and you close this page, my comments won't show up for 12 hours. After 12 hours, you can come in and you'll find the link again. And as far as I know, I'm the only live streaming site that has that particular attribute, where my comments disappear for 12 hours. So have a great night. Hugs for everybody. See everybody on the next show. We'll see you hopefully tomorrow night. That's my plan anyway. Take care. Have a great one.
They said it was clean, too cheap to meter. Built the dome, then cooked the beaker. Said the rod was safe as sealed in drums, but left them leaking out of Idaho slums. Hallelujah, being anti-nuclear's not dumb. Hallelujah, being anti-nuclear is fun. Hallelujah, being anti-nuclear has won. Hallelujah, nuclear exceptionalism is done. They chase the sun, all fusion proud. Ignore the barrels stacked in clouds. Promise stars in every socket, while curium settled in the market. Hallelujah, being anti-nuclear's not dumb. Hallelujah, being anti-nuclear is fun. Hallelujah, being anti-nuclear has won. Hallelujah, nuclear exceptionalism is done. Chart is clean, while whales rolled up inside the submarine. Blame the algae, blame the rain, but never trace the gamma chain. Hallelujah, being anti-nuclear's not dumb. Hallelujah, being anti-nuclear is fun. Hallelujah, being anti-nuclear has won. Hallelujah, nuclear exceptionalism is done. Now the rods are rusting, the record spins. Mama warned them too many sins. Keep your son, keep your lab coat pride, till you fix the waste you tried.